What's going on, guys? This is episode 2 of the Point to Point NHL recap show. We're going to be recapping sort of the first couple days of the NHL season. It's currently October 12th when we're recording, so not too much has happened in terms of games and stuff this week, but we had some contract extensions. Rosters are final now. I think we start off with the rosters, Mark. When you look at the waivers and the final rosters, on our last episode, we were talking about Lassie Thompson and that whole situation with Ottawa and Anaheim, and we were really talking about how it didn't make any sense. Honestly, it makes even least sense right now what's going on. So we got reclaimed by the Ottawa Senators off waivers. He's going to be sent down to the AHL. But what do you think about this whole situation that's going on with him in Ottawa?
Definitely kind of strange, and it's definitely looking around the league, like it seems like a lot of teams don't really have too much interest in this guy anyway, right? Even if they were to trade him, obviously I'm sure like he's expecting more of himself in the sense of expected a lot more from him, like being a first round pick a couple years back now, you know what I mean? You'd think within a couple seasons he could probably make it to the NHL, be more of a full timer than just being called up and down. Not even really like fantastic numbers in the AHL the last couple seasons either. So, I mean, I think it's getting to the point where I don't want to say they're giving up on him, but I mean, he's going to have to show a lot of strides this year if he wants to become like a full-time NHL player, in my opinion, because we've seen some guys recently, man, that have kind of faded their way out of the NHL being top picks. Like Vitaly Kravtsov was another guy that comes to mind a couple years back. Like, these guys are you don't have a solidified spot anymore, no matter how high you're drafted. You know what I mean? You got to earn it. And I don't think Thompson has really earned that at all.
Yeah, Ottawa's for sure shown that they don't value this guy and that they don't really see him in their future plans of their roster. For me, if I'm Lassie Thompson, though, he doesn't have that much power, but at what point does he sort of go to management and say like, I don't really want to be here. Can we get a trade or something? Because as I said, Ottawa has shown they don't value him. They've shown they don't have him in their plans for the future. And when he goes over to Anaheim, he's probably thinking like, okay, cool, this is going to be a chance for me to get a shot in the NHL, be able to prove myself with a new team. And then he goes back to Ottawa, and it's got to be a bit awkward for the guy, no?
I think it's definitely a weird situation for sure. Just like I said, like even no one else like putting in a claim for him after like Anaheim did, you know what I mean? So I would kind of assume that Anaheim was the only team to put in a claim in the first place, considering no one did when he went on the waivers the second time. I think it's definitely an awkward situation. I think if he hasn't already, I think probably a trade request will be coming sometime in the near future if like he's not up in the NHL at all. Because I think at this point he thinks he's good enough. I'm not really convinced he's good enough, to be quite honest with you. I think he's going to be like one of these guys that kind of ends up maybe like fading out of the league. Maybe he'll go to Finland and play in Liga or something like that. But definitely an awkward situation for him and the Senators. I think you don't really see that too often where a guy goes on waivers and then goes on waivers again a couple days later and then goes back with the same team.
Yeah, for sure. I can't think of one other scenario where this has happened to a player, especially a player who's like a high pick in the first round, looked promising, but it's probably the weirdest situation I've seen to start the NHL season with a player and his team. But when you look at some of these other players around the NHL and some of these other teams, they're getting a lot of business done now. We'll go to Winnipeg. They've re-signed Mark Scheifele and Connor Hellebuck to identical deals. It's 7-year deals worth $59.5 million contracts. The AAV on these deals, it's $8.5 million per season. Both players are 30 years old right now, so these contracts are going to take them till they're about 38, 39. They're going to be pretty old players when these are expiring. But both of these players, they would have been UFAs at the end of the season. Are these good or bad contracts for the Jets, Mark?
So I think you can kind of look at this in two ways. I think for like a Winnipeg Jets side, if you're a fan, it's kind of a positive considering like they've just lacked being able to bring in talent. Obviously a couple of guys have wanted out of there recently, and like Dubois and Line, but they've really struggled to bring in unrestricted free agents. They've been building through the draft and through trade. So I think on that side of things, it's a positive that you have two really good players that want to stay with your team long term and potentially finish out their career there. These contracts, though, are definitely a risk, I think. $8.5 million. I don't really mind for either of them, like at this moment, but just looking over time, considering they're going to be, what, 37, 38 by the time these deals are done, I really don't know if they're going to be playing up to par at that point. I know since you have these guys, it's more like you got to risk it to go for it now. I just don't know if this even helps the Jets long term anyway. Like I vocally said, I think this team needs to take a step back before they can be good. It's not like these are additions that are coming in. They're just essentially prolonging their contracts now, right? Like they're not really a better team because Scheifele and Hellebuck re-signed. It's more that they're just staying past this year. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I think you can look on this on both sides as like a fan and just for the long term. I don't really like it that much for the Jets, though. I think it was necessary, just because, like I said, with the free agents and lacking. But these are really risky contracts, especially not kicking in until they're 31 years old.
See, for both these contracts, I honestly really like them because me being a Flames fan, when I look at what happened with the Kachuk and not as much Kachuk because at least we got some good assets back for him, but really with Gaudreau, if you're a team that plays in a market where it's harder for you to get guys to come in free agency or get players to stick around, when you do have players, especially top end players that are willing to stick around, you have to do everything you can to lock those guys up, and you absolutely cannot lose them for nothing. So that's what they've done. That's what the Winnipeg Jets have done. They've gone out, signed these guys. Yes, the term is pretty long, and they're going to be old when those contracts are expiring. But we know the cap's going to go up, and Winnipeg's really banking on that because if the cap goes up, what they think it's going to go up over the next 7 years or 8 years for these contracts, by the time they're towards the end of the contracts, that 8.5 million, what's it going to be like? If a player was making 6.5, 5 million right now, so it could turn out that in the future, it's it's not that bad of a contract. And then the other thing I really like about these contracts is you pushed back having to deal with sort of the rebuild or taking that step back. So now if this season or next season Winnipeg really does need to take that step back, you have Hellebuck and Scheifele who you can both trade, and with them locked up, you'll be able to get a lot more assets than you would have been able to get if you were to trade them at trade deadline this year. And a team I look at for Scheifele especially is the Boston Bruins because they're towards the end of their sort of era with their core. So if they can go get that number one center, which they absolutely need, why not make a shot at Scheifele if you're the Boston Bruins?
I mean, yeah, but I just don't see them like willing to trade him after signing him to this extension at all. I think they'll probably at least give it a couple years. I just think that
Yeah,
I think Boston's probably gonna be made like a decision on like another guy by the time like Scheifele would even, I guess, being wanted out, or like if the Jets were willing to trade him, you know what I mean? I think their main target now, if they're looking in free agency in the Bruins, is probably Elias Lindholm if he doesn't end up getting re-signed with Calgary. Obviously, like he's
that'll
got
be a
some
rough
interest in
one.
staying. Sorry, he's got some interest in staying, but it's gonna depend how Calgary does this year. I think he's even said that publicly too. He wants to see kind of how it plays out. Obviously, like a big first one of the season for them last night, winning that late. But I think the Calgary's really got to get Lindholm done, or they're gonna be in a tough spot. Getting Scheifele back, obviously, it's really hard to replace a 1C. You know what I mean? A guy who's also scored 40 goals a couple times as well. So I think overall, as Jets fans, you got to be happy about this deal. My main concern was just kind of the final years of that contract. I think, if anything, it'd be more of a concern for Hellebuck, maybe. If he's an incredible goalie, but it's just like, will he be in 7 years from now? You know what I mean? And if he's more like, if he's turning into like a 1B backup type, you know what I mean? Like, say he starts at that age, he's kind of like what Fleury is now. You know what I mean? If he's making $8 million, like that's just my main concern about it.
Yeah, it could definitely be rough if in the future Hellebuck takes a lot of steps back. But for the meantime, I love these contracts because you're just not you're not losing these players for nothing in a market where it's hard for you to get players to want to come in or stay.
Or even
But
get an elite goalie. Like, he's an incredible goaltender,
yeah,
man.
he
Like,
is.
there's not many of them out there. Like, it is a positive for them, but I was just kind of saying both sides of what I thought, I guess. But overall, I'd be happy about it as a Jets fan.
Well, another team right now that's got to be really happy with the contracts they signed. It's the Buffalo Sabres. We'll start off with Owen Power because that's the most recent contract. He's signed a 7-year extension with the team with an AAV of 8.35. He's currently 20 years old right now. I was talking to one of our colleagues at work the other day, and he was absolutely hating on the contract, saying that he's proved nothing. Owen Powers only really played one full season in the NHL, which was last year, and he put up 35 points, 4 goals, 31 assists. His time on ice was just below 24. But I love what the Buffalo Sabres are doing with this contract because you're getting a defenseman who you think could be a top 5 defenseman in 4 or 5 years. And if he does pan out the way that they think he's going to pan out, 8.35 a year is going to be an absolute steal for this guy. Are you a fan of this contract though, or are you thinking it's a bit risky?
I actually really like this contract. I wouldn't say it's like one of the best in the league or anything like that. I think it definitely could have potential to be if he turns out the way a lot of people think. I don't really think this is a bad contract in any way. Like Jake Sanderson got over $8 million a couple weeks ago, right? So I was kind of expecting Power to be in this range, probably a little bit above. But the key stat you said there when you went over all that is his time on ice, man. This guy, yeah, he's only played one full season, but he's stepped into a huge role with this team. And he's done good stuff at both sides of the ice. I really like this deal. He's still really young. People are forgetting. Like, he's got one more year left on his entry-level deal, and then he's signed for 7 more seasons. I really like this deal for Buffalo. They're obviously signing guys at pretty good prices. Obviously, the Dahlin at $11 million. It is a lot of money, but I think he could definitely grow into that as well. I don't know if he's quite there yet. He obviously took a huge jump last season. But I really like this for Owen Power and the Sabres. They're locking up their entire core. Their next guys are just going to be kind of their secondary pieces, and like Jack Quinn, Paterka, probably Zach Benson in a couple of years once he gets signed. And then you've got like Devon Levi back there who you're probably going to have to worry about depending how good he is. You know what I mean? But you've got pretty much your entire core locked up right now. And I'd say like pretty reasonable contracts, especially Tage Thompson at just over 7. I think Buffalo's in a really good situation. I really like this contract. I don't know. I wouldn't say he's worth it right now, but a lot of these contracts are being signed for the future. You know what I mean? And I think this is going to be a really good deal for the Sabres.
Yeah, I love these contracts, especially what Buffalo's doing where they're signing these guys for the future because when they are when they are gonna be a top 5 team in a few years and contending for a cup every season, you're not gonna be in a position where your bottom 6 is gonna be super weak because you just can't go out and get those secondary pieces as you mentioned earlier. What Buffalo's doing and betting on the future, I think they're doing a great job of it right now. As you mentioned, Dowling, he's the only one that they haven't really done that with. But for him, you have to give them an exception when you look at his contract because he took that bridge deal, right? None of these other guys have taken that bridge deal. So for Dowling at 11 million, I still think it's going to be a good contract for him. And it doesn't kick in this season. It kicks in next season too. So we don't know what sort of step he's going to take this season. If he takes a similar step to that he took last season, he could be a top 3 defenseman in the NHL, like no doubt about it. So I love the Owen Power contract. This Dowling one, I'm a fan of as well. The 11 million is a bit high, but it could be worse when you think of the defenseman that Dowling could become. What do you overall think though about the Dowling contract?
Like it's hard for me to say like it's a great deal for the Sabres just because of how high the AAV is. I think he kind of deserves it though, considering like he's taken this bridge deal. He's making $6 million. He's outproducing that. You know what I mean? I think just to get him to stay for the 8 years as well is just super key. He's obviously going to be there into his 30s. I don't know. It's got the potential to not be great just because of how high that AAV is, but I think this guy's already a top 10 defenseman in the whole league. And especially if he's jumping into like that top 5, top 3 conversation, it's hard for me to say it's a bad contract. I think the really good thing about it is that it's going to be done by the time he's in his early 30s compared to some of these guys that have signed these really large tickets recently in accordance to like Drew Doughty and Carlson, where it's taken them into like their late 30s, you know what I mean? And they're not really producing at that contract level. Like Carlson obviously was unbelievable last year, but we can say for the most part of this contract, like he hasn't been worth $11.5 million. You know what I mean? So I like that it's not taking him too far into his career and he's going to be able to sign like another contract after. I could see both sides of it. I could see it not really working out where like he's more of like a $9 million guy, but I could also see it where he's a top 5 to 3 defenseman in the league and $11 million is worth it for him.
The other thing that's really helping out Buffalo on this contract is since they are going out and locking up all these other guys to long-term deals early on, you can if you're the Buffalo Sabres, you can afford to give Dowling that 11 million because you have Tage Thompson, Dylan Cousins, and Owen Power all locked up for under 8.5 million. So you can afford to give that big contract to Dowling. When we look at another team who's really gone out there and locked up all their big players, the one that comes to mind for me is the Toronto Maple Leafs. And the way Toronto, when you look at how Toronto's done it, you had Austin Matthews making over 11 right away. You had Mitch Marner making over 11 right away. And then you had Nylander making that just below 7 right away. And you had John Tavares as well, making around $11 million. So for Buffalo, they've sort of done that same thing as locking up their core, but they've done it for a couple $1 million cheaper per player, realistically. So I think they're doing a great job over there in Buffalo. And if you're a Buffalo Sabres fan, you got to be ecstatic signing these contracts going into the season.
I think like also the thing is with them too is like you got to build your team around like your center depth, your defense, your goaltending. Well, you potentially got a goalie in the future. Your two best defensemen are locked up. Your two best centermen are locked up. Listen, Jeff Skinner takes a lot of heat. He's still a really good player. He's just not worth $9 million. It's the problem. You got 4 more years left of that deal at $9 million. Technically, 3 more years once all these contracts kick in. You're going to be getting his money off the books in a couple years. Tuck seems to really love it there. He's from the area. He's probably re-signing for a little bit more than he makes now. I think the money's going to work out for these guys in the future, and I think they're going to be able to surround their team with some good depth pieces, and they've already got some really good guys that have potential in like Quinn, Paterka, Zach Benson now, just getting him 13th overall in the draft. Like,
That
I
was
think
an
this
absolute
team's
steal of a
I
pick.
think this team is really set up nice for the future, and I think they could be. They haven't made the playoffs in a long time, and it's crazy to say, but like I predicted them to come in third place in this division, man. I think some good things are coming from this team this year and past that.
Yeah, they're gonna be such a fun team to watch this year. I'm really looking forward to watching their games. I'll be having a lot of money on the line whenever they're playing. So it's gonna be a great year in
Big
Buffalo.
opening night tonight against the Rangers. Curious to see how they do. It's going to be a good test for them right off the bat.
Yeah, before the podcast, I was looking at all the lines for that game. I was trying to get some bets in quickly, but didn't have the time, so I'm gonna have to remember to do that at when we're done recording. But another team that was similar to Buffalo, but they've taken really that big leap up is New Jersey. They took a massive leap last year. They had 112 points last season, and a lot of that was due to their head coach Lindy Ruff. But he's now gone. He signed a multi-year extension with the franchise. It was sort of a really good story to see with him, considering at the beginning of last season, you had Devils fans chanting "Fire, fire Lindy." So I'm loving that he's succeeding there and going to be able to stick around after everything that he did with the team last season. What do you like about this?
Man, I think he completely deserves this extension, to be honest. It seems like those guys in New Jersey love playing for him, even like Jack Hughes, you know what I mean? Nico Heischer. I was listening to Heischer on 32 Thoughts. He's just said how much the Roughs changed within their team and how much he just allows them to play. Obviously, this team had a really good season last year. Um, those chants were definitely uncalled for, I think, and they obviously started chanting back, sorry, Lindy, and he had a whole laugh about it, which I thought was hilarious and just cool. But even like the season before, man, like they obviously took a huge leap last year, but the year before that, I thought they were one of those teams where they looked a lot better than what they showed, even missing the playoffs. And I thought this team's really got some potential to grow into. Like I said, players love playing for this guy. They're bringing some new guys into Foley this year. I really like him. Luke Hughes is coming up. He's going to make an impact on this team. They're going to have Simon Nemec too. They're trusting him to grow with these young guys. And even though he's older and he's been coaching in this league for a while, he understands how to coach these new types of players. I think this is a great deal for New Jersey and for himself. This could be his last crack at it. Obviously, he's getting a lot older now. But honestly, I wish the best for him. I'm not really a Devils fan, but if they were to ever win a Stanley Cup, I'd really be happy for this guy.
Yeah, all around it was just good to see that. It was a guy who was maybe under a bit of fire at the start of last season, had a had a great turnaround for the franchise and really is getting what he deserves from it.
And for me, besides obviously Bruce Montgomery having that season last year with the Bruins, it was hard not to give him Coach of the Year. But Ralph was second on my list, man. Like the way he improved this team, I think he definitely could have deserved the trophy as well. But obviously, giving it to Montgomery's no surprise. Like 65 wins, it's hard really not to give it to him.
Yeah, definitely good to see. This next this next story, dude, I'm so happy this is finally coming to the NHL. I don't know if you've seen this or not, but ESPN is going to be debuting a NFL Red Zone style show, but for the NHL. It's going to be on October 24th, and they're going to be calling this thing, it's going to be called the Frozen Frenzy. Yeah, I'm liking the name, but basically all 32 teams, they're going to be playing on that day, and the games are going to be starting every 15 minutes. Have you heard about this or no?
So I have actually heard about this because I'm planning to go to the Sabres Habs game the night before this, and as that's the only game in the NHL that night, and I noticed that there's games starting like pretty early the next night, and how they're all 15 minutes apart. I mean, it's worth a shot for the NHL, like even if it doesn't end up working out. So the one thing I just don't understand, so it is going to be like the NFL where you're watching ESPN, it's just changing channels all the time, correct? That's the only thing I don't really know about. All I really knew is that it was starting 15 minutes apart.
Yeah, so for NFL Red Zone, basically since on a Sunday you have pretty much all the teams playing except for I guess four because you have Monday night football and Thursday night football, right? So you'll have what is that, 28 teams playing on a Sunday? Yeah, I'm terrible at math, but somehow I found a way there.
No,
You
you're
have
right. You're
28
right.
teams. You have 28 teams playing on the Sunday though, and since it's so many games and so much to follow, what NFL Red Zone does is it's just like a single channel you watch, and basically they go from like big play to big play to big play to like a big hit or whatever. So, and then they'll also what the other thing they'll do is they'll do like split screen. So you have one game like if you have two games where they're on like the 5 yard line about to score a touchdown, they'll go split screen, bring the one game on the one side, the other game on the other side. It's dude, it's an amazing thing to watch. On Sundays, I love watching NFL Red Zone because you don't miss any big stories or any big touchdowns or plays or whatever. So for the NHL version, what they're gonna do is they're gonna be showing you all the goals, all the power plays, and all the big hits from around the NHL. So it's it's gonna be so much fun to watch, man. I'm so happy that they're bringing this. I think it's gonna be super successful. The only thing that sort of sucks for this Frozen Frenzy thing compared to NFL Red Zone is for NFL Red Zone, like it's every Sunday, you're having those 28 teams playing a game, right? So you know you're having all those games, but for the NHL, you have games spread out a lot more throughout the week. So who knows how often they're going to be able to do this? If it's going to be once a week, once a month, because for me, the
Could
way
depend on the success of it, right? Like they've already done
yeah,
the schedule for this season too. So I'm feeling if it's not planned again, then it's probably not happening again until next season.
for me, I think a great way to do it would be to have it on Hockey Night in Canada nights when you have all
See,
the
that's
Canadian
that's
teams
what I was
playing,
gonna
and
say.
yeah,
Like, is this a missed opportunity doing this on like a Tuesday compared to a Saturday?
I
Do you
don't
think?
since you have for the first episode of this, you really have to have as much action as you can possible. And I haven't fully looked at the NHL schedule for this season. So if there isn't a Saturday where you have all 32 teams playing, you don't really want to do it Like you want to do it on the night where you're gonna have every team in the NHL playing and you have the most action possible that you can show on this new show. Where if you do it on a Saturday and let's say you have like 8 games, it's not gonna get that same traction as if on a Tuesday where you have 16 games, right?
Yeah. I mean, that could have been changed on, of course, them actually making the schedule and just scheduling it all for a Saturday. But maybe they're just worried about the risks of like, you know what I mean, competing with like the NBA or
Yeah,
potentially
college
like even
football.
obviously MLB playoffs is on right now too, right? So I would be curious to know what their thought is about that. I'm pretty excited to check it out though, man. Obviously, um, like you said, like it works pretty well for the NFL. I haven't really watched too much of Red Zone the NFL, but it should be interesting to see. Especially like just coming back from the game the night before, I'll probably be pretty pumped and in the hockey mood just to watch. You know, I mean, every game start. What does it start like 5:30 Eastern, or is it like little bit later than that? But I think it's before 7 p.m. to be honest, because they're trying to get in like every game before I think like 11.
Yeah, it's gonna be an insane night. I'm praying that I have that day off so I can just
Be
sit
glued
in
to
my
the TV.
sit in my pajamas and just watch watch that all night. For me, the first thing that came to mind though when I sort of saw the news about this show was how much it's going to help the growth of the NHL, especially in the US, because in the US for the NHL right now, we're still trying to pick up a lot of new fans down there. And the best way to, I think, pick up those fans is to show them all the action. Because an NHL game, it can be long. You can have games or points where there's not too much action going on. So if you can have this and just be showing like just nonstop action, nonstop hits, just nonstop entertainment, I think a lot of American fans could tune into this and really be like, oh, this hockey is actually pretty cool. Like I should start watching some more. So I think it's going to be great for the just the growth in the U.S. Do you do you think it's going to do good for the growth, or do you think it just could be an epic flop?
I think it's gonna be like a pretty good addition to what the NHL is doing. I'd like to definitely see it more than like once in a season if they're planning on doing it going forward. Like I don't see them adapting to the style, say like every week, kind of like the NFL does. And obviously the NFL is different, like you said. It's just pretty much all Sunday, right? And then you have the Monday and
Yeah,
Thursday game. So I can't see the NHL doing this like too often if they decide to. It'd be cool to see it like once a month though or something. Wouldn't you think? Like 5 or 6 times during the season. Like I think it'd be pretty cool. Even like a random weekday. Like we can even
I
try
think
it on a
for
weekend too. Like try it on a Tuesday, try it on a Saturday. See where like your better viewership is. You know what I mean? Like
yeah, I think for sure once a month at least. Like honestly, when I first saw this, I was really thinking like, why can't we get this for every hockey night in Canada every Saturday night? Because every Saturday night, I always want to watch my Flames game. Leafs, it's always fun to tune in, especially because I'm hanging out with a bunch of Leafs fans. But when we do that, like I miss all the other games that night. So it's if you could have the Leafs game on one TV and then have this Frozen Frenzy on the other TV, like it'd be perfect for Saturday nights. I would not leave my couch.
I think the one thing I'm excited about for this too is like obviously they're gonna be panning the goals and stuff, but I'm sure they're gonna be changing the channel a lot when there's like power plays, and I think that's gonna be like really
Yeah,
exciting to see.
yeah. So they're gonna show you the goals every time there's a power play. They'll go to that channel for a power play. If there's 2 games with a power play on like at the same time, what they'll do is they'll just split screen it. And then like for NFL Red Zone, they'll even have 4 games all on the like TV at once. So you could have like 4 power plays all going on at once with like top left, top right, bottom left. I dude, it's such a great idea, man. I don't know why all these leagues like NBA, any league that has games going on at the same time, don't run with this idea.
So I kind of thought about that, and I wonder if it's for like commercials and stuff. You know what I mean? Because like you don't have any commercials in like NFL Red Zone, and I guess like you know what I mean sponsoring for paying for that. I wonder if that has anything to do with it.
Yeah, that honestly, that for sure. That for sure
It
will
probably
have to do
does.
with
You know what
it.
I mean?
It'd be interesting to see how they
Moneymaker.
do it for the NHL if you have like a ticker or something, or how many like betting promos or whatever you have. But it's dude, it's gonna be so much. It's gonna be so much
So
fun.
my last question is: so it's on ESPN. Is it going to be on like Sportsnet now for like people in Canada,
I I
or
don't know if it's gonna be
how
on
does that work?
Sportsnet now because ESPN and TSN are they're like married, right?
Yeah, I just don't know
So
how
I
it
don't.
works because Sportsnet's got all the rights to
Yeah,
hockey for the most part, right? Besides like the odd Leaf game. So
I'm
I'm not
I'm
really too
not
sure how
sure
it
how that's
works.
I'm not sure how that's gonna work, but I'll find a way to get the stream going. So there's other pretty big news in the NHL right now. They've been getting a lot of backlash for this one. So the NHL, they sent out a memo this week, and it out to all 32 teams, basically clarifying like what players can and cannot do as part of these themed celebrations for the season. And the big thing in the memo was them letting the teams know that they're going to have a ban on players using pride tape during warm-ups. So far, like a lot of people around the NHL have spoken out about the decision and how they feel about it. The list right now includes players like Connor McDavid, Zach Hyman, Rasmus Anderson, Brian Burke, and many more players or GMs or just people around the NHL orbit have spoken out about the issue. Most of the comments so far have been that it's a step back for the NHL and for the whole Pride nights. And then the other biggest comments have been that players are thinking this decision should be reversed. The big player for me though is that Philadelphia Flyers player Scott Laughton. He's actually come out and said he doesn't care what the NHL thinks. Basically, he's going to continue to use the tape on Pride Night for warm up. What do you think about the NHL's decision to have this whole ban?
Like I don't really want to get too deep into like everything that goes on with this stuff, but like I do disagree with it. Like I don't think that they should be doing this. I personally just don't see the issue with like anyone going out there and doing it. Like I really personally didn't respect like Provorov's decision, like James Reimer, Eric Stahl. But like I said, I don't really want to get too deep into that. Um, I just don't really understand why people can't be included in this stuff. You're just kind of taking away people of this community. You know what I mean? Like if I was in this community, I would just think, well, the NHL is not, they don't really care about us. You know what I mean? Like, how else are they supposed to look at this?
Yeah, I don't think there is any other way to look at it. For me, when I sort of read this, the NHL, what they did is they looked they looked at what happened last year with the Pride nights for these teams and saw that there was players not participating in warm-ups or not wanting to have to do with it. And all those players, it was in the media a lot of those players were sort of getting ripped on for that. So the NHL saw that and they want to protect their players and don't want all this negative media
They
publicity
don't want the
over these
backlash for
nights.
the
Yeah, they
guys
don't
that
want the
that
backlash.
aren't doing it right. Like
So they
Provorov kind of started with that.
Yeah, so the NHL probably thought the easiest way to take that away was just sort of stop the whole thing itself, which I don't think is the right thing to do. Like if you do have these players that don't want to be a part of it, just just don't play them that night, or
Yeah, see
don't
that
have like
that's what I would have done to be honest. It was just like that whole Provorov thing with Tortorella just didn't really make sense, and then like he kind of supported him, and it was just like not really a good look, like even for the whole organization. Even myself, when I just said like I'm not a part of the community, like I completely respect it. You know what I mean? It's not what I identify as. That's more or less what I meant. But I don't really think it's fair to them at all that like the NHL is not like, to be honest, like if I were them, like it's just like I wouldn't support the NHL. Like you know what I mean? Like why should you? Like they're not supporting you.
it really sucks too because like 99% of the players in the NHL like do support the whole night, are completely open to it. But then you have those like you have that 1% of the NHL players who don't. don't agree with it and don't want to take part in it all. And it's that 1% of players in the NHL that's really wrecking it now for everybody. Because like this shouldn't be something we're like this isn't something we should be talking about right now. This shouldn't be big
No,
news in the
not at
NHL. It
all,
should.
man. It's kind of sad that we even have to talk about it, to be quite honest with you, and that this is like a key topic in the NHL. Listen, for the guys that support it like you and I do, I'm happy guys talk. I'm happy guys spoke out, especially a guy like Connor McDavid, man.
Yeah, that
He's got a lot of influence on this game. Kids look up to this guy. You know what I mean? See, personally, Connor can do what he believes. I would love for him to step out that night with pride tape on, just like
I think
Scott Lawton.
players will. I think players
I think
will.
some will too. I think some have just not publicly said it, like Lawton has. I would love for Connor McDavid, some other guys to do the same thing. You know what I mean? And even if they don't, it doesn't mean they don't support it. It's just some guys are willing to just like take that risk and like deal with the consequences from the league. Like, what are they gonna do? Suspend Lawton? Like, are you serious? Like,
That's
they'll probably fine him, I guess, but like,
they
it's
won't find him.
ridiculous.
They won't find him.
I hope they don't, but I mean,
Last year when all the players were sitting out for it, last year when all the players were sitting out for it, the NHL sort of like they didn't do anything. All they really did was say like, look, they have their rights to like have their opinions. We're not going to do anything about it. So if you do that one season, then the next season you have a player who is like breaking the rules again, but on the opposite side. And if you're the NHL and you go out and punish these players, man, like talk about making a situation worse if they were to do that, right?
right. And it's just like you look at some of these other like these other like theme, like I don't know what the right word is. Like, can we call it like a themed night? Like, you know
Yeah,
what
the
I mean?
NHL and the NHL and the memo called them theme celebrations.
Right. So like, you know what I mean? Like there's other celebrations too that I'm sure that like some individuals don't necessarily agree with, but like they're kind of like forced to do it at the same time. You know what I mean? It's just more like a lot of these decisions, it seems like with the guys not taking part has to do with like their religion. Um, but at the same time, there could be other instances in other theme nights where guys just don't necessarily agree with it, but like they kind of have to do it. So I don't really understand why this is any different.
Yeah. Overall, it's a rough story for the NHL right now, and I am hoping that there's going to be a better resolution just within this
I hope some guys
season.
just come out with tape and they say screw it, and they're just going to end up like going back to it.
Yeah, we
Or
definitely need.
teams, or even if they won't or even if they won't go back to it, teams will just keep doing it.
Yeah, I definitely don't think the story's going to end here with all this. I think we should probably get into week one though, or these opening two nights of the NHL, and sort of break down our thoughts there, because there was a decent bit that happened. First of all, I noticed watching some of these games, there was a lack of defense, but that's expected, right? To start off the season.
Yeah, it kind of happens every year, man. There's a lot of high scoring games. Obviously, there was a couple games that were a little bit on the lower scoring side, but even like watching that Leafs Habs game last night, defense wasn't really great from either team. You know what I mean? Couple mistakes by the Leafs, Habs capitalized on. Habs took way too many penalties, gave the Leafs the opportunity to get back in the game. I don't think goaltending and defense has been too great to start the year, to be honest. Even looking, Edmonton was really rough last night, giving up 8 goals as well. I think it's much expected. A lot of guys are just learning to play with each other. They're in new teams, new faces. I think we'll see some more structure probably by the end of the month into November. We'll probably see some games. There's obviously going to be the odd game here or there, which is high scoring, but I think a lot of teams are going to be a lot more structured in the next like month or so.
Yeah, and you mentioned that Toronto Montreal game as being one of the games where it seemed like there was no defense being played. We got to talk about the fight in that game because it's the first fight for those two players against each other, and we were waiting for it all last season. It never happened. When we found out Ryan Reeves was coming over to the Atlantic Division, we knew it was going to happen at some point this season. Didn't know if it was going to be open at night. Personally, I was going into work yesterday talking with the boys saying it's happening tonight at some point. Nobody agreed with me. I look like a clown. But then it happened. The Wi-Fi Ryan Reeves fight happened. dude, it was sort of a disappointing fight, to be honest. Like Reeves never really got going. He sort of was stumbling around, and then Jack Guy like pushed him over. But I think Jack Guy won that one round one between the two.
Yeah, honestly though, like it as a Habs fan, yeah, like you want to say that, but I mean, Jack I did have a bit of an advantage just because of how he started. He obviously dropped
Yeah,
the gloves first and went right at him. Man, honestly, like I agree with you. It wasn't really much of a fight, but like, dude, just seeing those guys like pretty much wrestle each other was like
dude, it was
entertaining.
great,
Just like
man.
how big, like honestly though, like you knew Jack I was a beast, but just actually seeing him go up against Reeves, dude, just shows you how tough he is. Like,
Dude, I
yeah, he
think
pushed him into the net, but dude, he pushed Ryan Reeves into the net. Like, he didn't some random dude, man. Like, I was really just impressed just by that. I mean, not much of a fight, obviously. You want to see them actually like square off. We'll definitely see it sometime, probably this season when they play next. I was entertained by it though, to be quite honest with you.
oh same. I can't wait for this. I can't wait for round two. Next up, so far, there's been a lot of penalty shots. There was a penalty shot on opening night in the NHL, and then also a penalty shot on day two. Do you think the league's pushing for some of these close calls to go in favor of the penalty shot right now?
So, like Friedman was talking about this at the intermission yesterday. I honestly think for the entertainment aspect, if like I feel like refs are told, you know what, if it's close and like you're kind of even like second guessing what you're gonna call, like they might even be just telling them to go for the penalty shot. That one on the first night when Luke Shen kind of took down Hagel,
I
100%
thought that
thought
was
that was
pretty clear.
that was a pretty blatant play. Hagel wasn't even able to get a shot off. Last night, though, honestly, I was a little bit confused by that. Faust was able to get to the backhand and get a full shot off. I was really surprised that was called a penalty shot. I'm curious to see over the next couple weeks, even throughout the season, if we're going to see an increase in penalty shots. I mean, it's entertainment. How can you not hate it? Like you're out of your seat, on the edge of your seat when a penalty shot's happening, right? It doesn't happen that often, just sometimes. I kind of hope that they are told to call them a little bit more. I think it's really good for the growth of the game as well.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on all everything you just said. If it's going to be a close call, give them the penalty shot. The only
I just don't want to
thing,
see penalty shots called like the Fost one yesterday.
yeah,
But there are a lot of instances where you think it's going to be a penalty shot and they call a penalty. I in those instances, like why not just give him a penalty shot? Like the guy just had a breakaway, and you know what I mean. Like he kind of deserves another one if he's especially not able to get like a shot off.
the only thing somebody mentioned to me though was like some teams rather have that 2 minute power play. So
Don't you think it would be cool if a team could decide?
that's what that's where I was going to go with it. Like you should be able to have a team decide,
That would be very interesting.
or have it like have a team be able to decide who to take the penalty shot.
I think technically anyone on the ice can take it. I think that's how it is now. I'm not 100% sure about that. I just think for the most part, they do give it to the guy. Like, you know what I mean? Like, even if Stammer's on the ice, like Hagel had the breakaway, like, still a really good player, right? Like, I'm not 100% certain on that rule. I am, but I think that anyone on the ice can technically take it.
So yeah, I do it though where like literally like anybody can take it. You have Ryan Reeves go down on a breakaway, he gets hauled down. Like Austin Matthews is got off the ice 30 seconds before that. Like who cares? Let him take the penalty shot.
That would be pretty cool.
Because
I
if the
would like,
NHL is
I would love to see them try though deciding like if do you want a penalty
yeah,
shot or do you want a penalty or 2 minute power play?
either or would be good. It'd be good for the growth of the game. So I'm liking it so far how the NHL started off with these calls. Last night, Oilers they got I don't even know how to say it. They got absolutely slapped around by Vancouver. I I did not see this happening whatsoever. You have Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, two best players in the NHL. We talked about on last week's episode how pissed off they are. They're gonna come out. It's a statement season for the Oilers. They get absolutely dogged around
Well,
by
they're even more pissed now, I'll
dude.
tell you that.
It was ugly. Part of the reason was Jack Campbell. He didn't look too great. He let in 4 goals off 16 shots, and he was eventually yanked from the game. This is a goaltender though who struggled a lot last season. struggled a lot in opening night for the Edmonton Oilers. Like what does Edmonton do with Jack Campbell? And like what does Jack Campbell got to do himself?
Yeah, this is a tough situation for the Oilers. Like this is gotta be one, if not their worst contract, probably just besides like Darnell Nurse. Um,
Darnell
I
Nurse, though,
thought,
at least like you can rely on him a little bit. Like, dude, Jack
yeah, like
Campbell,
you can rely on to be in the top four. You know what I mean?
it's like
It's
even on a
like,
back to back, you don't want that guy going in net right now.
yeah, and the thing is, it's like Nurse. It's like you'd feel much more comfortable if he's making like what, like 6 million. But like this point, Campbell's like what, like a $1 million goaltender. Like what he's
I
been
don't
playing.
even
Like even if like it's tough for this guy, right? Like I watched him a lot when he was in Toronto. I was never convinced he was the guy. I just don't think
same.
he has it to be a starting goalie. I knew whatever team gave him a contract like this, it was just going to be a complete mistake. With him, it's like his body language isn't usually great, and when he lets in a goal, and it's more like not him selling out his teammates. It's more like he's disappointed in
He's
himself,
really hard on himself.
and I think that's really affected him. So they were talking yesterday how in the summer he was seeing a sports psychologist and he
Yeah,
started working on this stuff. But here's my thing, man, is that he could have worked on it and he could have improved it. But I just don't think he has like the skill and the tactics as a goaltender to be this guy. Like his mentality could have changed and he could have got better in that aspect. Like even last night, man, like he wasn't really showing me he was that upset after letting in those goals. Like that was kind of an improvement I saw from him from last season and even from the season before in Toronto. But I just don't think he has the skill, the athleticism. I'm not convinced he's the guy. And I was so shocked when I saw he was starting over Stuart Skinner. Listen, I know Campbell played really well in the preseason, but I mean, Skinner was your guy all last year. He was your guy in the playoffs too. I know he didn't play that well, but I personally would have went with Skinner yesterday. Obviously, him coming in didn't really change too much. This
they
is a
literally
tough
had
one with Campbell, though. This
identical
is
stat
tough,
lines.
man. Skinner's making 2.5 million while Campbell's making double that for 3 years. Like, if he's not improving, like they have to be looking to buy him out.
Buy him
They're
out
tight to the cap
something.
anyway. Like they need, I think they need to improve their team in a couple different aspects anyway. And I think buying him out is going to give you that money to do so. And you go sign like a, I don't know, like a vet or like a cheap backup or something like that. You know what I mean? Because that's all he's playing like right now anyway.
Yeah, it's definitely an ugly situation with him, and it could get a lot. It could look a lot worse as the season goes on.
I think you got to be selective when you play this guy. Like
Yeah,
you said, you don't even trust him back to backs. You're gonna have to. You can't burn Skinner out, right? Like you're gonna have to give him an opportunity to kind of resurrect himself. But I think you got to be giving Skinner the net for a bit. He showed what he did last year. He was pretty good most of the season. They don't always have the best like defense at times, like in their own zone. I don't really trust Campbell too much, and I can't see any team wanting to take this contract on.
so for me, the biggest story about opening night, it had to be the first overall pick, Mr. Connor Bedard, coming into the NHL. Did you see the referee when he was dropping the puck for the opening faceoff in that game? Like what he how they had him mic'd up and what he said?
I did.
That I thought that was pretty cool. Bedard,
It was pretty cool.
he's looked good in the NHL so far.
Dude,
It's
I've been pretty
only been
impressed with the
two
guy,
games,
man.
but
Like I didn't really watch any last night because of just the Leafs Habs game going on. I watched that entire Pittsburgh game though, man. Like he was their best player for
yeah.
most of the game, dude. Like 5 shots through 2 periods, 11 shot attempts in total. Got that assist as well. Obviously, his first NHL goal last night. Yeah, it was a wraparound, but I mean, he got the puck to the net, made a nice play, knew what he was doing. You know what I mean? He's gonna take it. He doesn't really care if it's a sniper or not. He's getting the monkey off his back early. You know what I mean? Obviously, Chicago doesn't have the best roster, but this kid's looking really good. Like he might be able to pull them at least out of last place. I don't see them really making the playoffs, but man, I don't like Chicago whatsoever as a team, but I'm definitely going to watch their games this year because of him.
Yeah, see, I don't like him at all. I was like, I'm gonna try to watch their games like for Connor Bedard if there's not many other games that are on. But dude, after watching that Pittsburgh game, I'm like, oh my God, man, whenever Chicago's on, I'm gonna be watching every game just to watch this guy. Like every time, the biggest thing with him is every time he has the puck on his stick, he looks so confident. Like for a guy in his first NHL game, he looked so confident every time he had the puck on his stick. And then the other thing was all the players playing against him, like n- knew and respected how much of a threat that guy is when he has the
Dude, did
puck
you
and
see
when he's
on the
on the
power
ice.
play even early in the game? Like he was playing like the top, like where like your left D would. Dude, like Achari was like giving him so much
Yeah,
respect, dude. Like he did not have any chance to like get off a one timer. And obviously, like doesn't matter how old this kid is. It's pretty much how good he is, right? Like you have to give him that respect or he's gonna light you up.
yeah, he's already been in looking really impressive so far, just within his first two NHL games. What do you think about like the coverage on him though? Because like there's a lot of coverage. Some of it's really good. Not gonna lie, there's probably about like 5% of the coverage on him is like, okay, we can settle down a bit there. Like I
It
don't know
might
if
even
you
be a
feel the
little bit
same way
more,
or not.
man.
Yeah. For me, the biggest one was the preseason when like Fleury tripped him on the breakaway,
Oh,
and every goddamn account on social media is reposting it and is like, it's like Connor Bedard gets tripped on a, I guess it wasn't a breakaway, it was a penalty shot, but it's Connor Bedard gets tripped on a penalty shot by Marc Andre Fleury. I'm like man, like how the fuck is this like blowing up? Like how is this a highlight, dude?
man, I don't know
Could
if
be
you heard what he said, but like he was like they were asking him and he was like, man, he's like, if I was a fan, I'd be tired of hearing my name too, of how much they're talking about me. Like I think he understands, you know what I mean? How much he's being talked about, right? Like it is obviously a little bit too much. At the end of the day, though, it's just like they're excited to get a new
yeah.
generational
I
type player in
understand
this
that.
league, right? You know what I mean? Like this kid's 18 years old. We're talking about him. Like, where's he gonna be in 10 years? Like, I hope nothing but the best for this kid. I hope he's another generational type player, and like we're talking about him with like Sid and Matthews and Draisaitl and McDavid. His personality seems really good too, right? He's not this young, cocky kid. Like he's a great interview, it seems like so far. Seems like a really nice kid. I hope he has a really good career.
For me, the one thing too I was thinking about with all the Bedard coverage is he's the first generational talent we've had come into the NHL in this like true social media day and age. Like
That's the thing, right?
Connor McDavid came in, well, like when Connor McDavid came in, social media was still big back then, but like it wasn't what it is nowadays.
I think the
So I think
last guy that's
that's
been
part of the
talked
reason as
about, like,
well.
I think the last guy who's been talked about, like, as close to Bedard is probably Lafreniere when because he had a lot of talk around him too, right? Saying that
Yeah.
he's this new kid from the Q, like Crosby, not exactly Crosby, but just because he's come from the Q, like Crosby 2.0, obviously has not lived up to that hype whatsoever. But there was a lot of talk about Lafreniere before he came into this league too.
There's a lot of talk, but I don't know, man. Connor Bedard though, it's just like you can't. Like it's like every other like NHL post right now or NHL like content that you're seeing on social media is like has to do with Bedard or something that he's doing. Like like even with last night's game, the Boston game, you have like Brad Marchand when he was sort of bugging him over by the bench there, like that's getting reposted like crazy. Where it's like I'm not like I don't think that's like ever really happened for an NHL rookie coming to the league where it's like he's just getting bugged by a guy by the bench and they're like, holy shit, look at this.
I think you're right. I think it's the fact that like social media wasn't as big. Like obviously when McDavid was taken 2015, even like Matthews in 2016, right? As
Yeah.
well. I think a lot with this kid too is like he hasn't really shown like much weakness, like regardless of even like on or off the ice with anything. So I think a lot of it's just like keeping close tabs on him. You have some guys out there that are probably haters and are just waiting for him to say something wrong or do something wrong. You know what I mean? And like all eyes are on this guy. Even the thing with Marchand, man, like he was getting bugged for a while. He was just pretty much acting like Marchand wasn't there.
Yeah.
Like at the same time as it is a lot, it is cool to see sometimes like when you're not like I wasn't watching the game last night, right? So like I would have never known that even happened unless they posted it. Like something like that I don't really mind. I just the shootout thing with Fleury was stupid though. Like it's like why do I care? Like I know he can stick handle well. Like you know what I mean? Like well, show it when it goes in. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm
It
I'm
doesn't
I'm
really
all on
make
board
it
with
doesn't really make
this.
sense to me why that was such a big deal. I don't mind a lot of it though. Obviously, it's just a new guy. They're getting new content out about him. You know what I mean? I don't really see it going anywhere though. To be honest, man, if you're pissed off about it, I don't really see it
I'm
going
an
any
old
other way
man.
soon. Especially the way he's playing. If he's putting up a point per game, like you might have to be muting Bedard's name on Twitter and Instagram.
Fuck, I'm gonna have all my social media deleted like month into the season. Connor Bedard, Connor Bedard's gonna be on pace for like 60 goals. I'm gonna be like, oh fuck. Any other surprising games or results though from the first two nights of the NHL, Mark? Like anything that sort of caught your attention?
Um, the only thing I thought kind of was early in the first night on Vegas, Seattle, after like that, it was a pretty cool cup raising or cup banner raising, excuse me, from Vegas. I don't know if you saw that with like the slot
Oh
machine.
yeah, that
That
was
was pretty cool. I thought Vegas came out like pretty flat, to be honest, at first, and they went up early. Like Aiden Hill kind of kept them in that game. Seattle was looking good. Not really much more thoughts on that game, though. I kind of expected Vegas to win anyway, but was just kind of impressed to see like Aiden Hill coming out and still being really strong after that playoff run last year as well. Nothing else really though, man. Happy to see Calgary got that opening night win late too. That was a pretty entertaining game. Markstrom looked like he played pretty well, minus like that
his
Kyle
save on
Connor goal was
Perfetti.
pretty weak.
His save on Perfetti at the end of the second period. That was vintage
Yeah.
Markstrom right there.
But my other thoughts are just like I'm just curious to see how like the goaltending goes this season, man. Like Alan Sansonov did not look great last night. Like Corpusalo, a couple of those goals he let in against Carolina was not good either. I just don't know if it's like shooters getting better or like goaltending being more difficult, but it's just like we've kind of seen a downhill of like elite goalies over the past couple of years. Obviously, some of them have like retired recently too, right? And I'm curious to see how some of these guys do. Is Gustafson in Minnesota going to be great again? Like Allmark looked good last night, but what kind of seasons he going to have? Jacob Markstrom as well. Just as a goalie, I'm always curious about these things, and I'm just curious to see who's going to be like up there for the Vezina Trophy this year.
Yeah, well, it was definitely a great start to the NHL season with these first 2 days. I'm excited to get back on the podcast next week and talk about the first full week of the NHL. That's going to be great. But I think this is all for today's episode, Mark.
I think we've covered a lot. Honestly, it was great to catch the first 2 days of the season. Obviously, like always excited for a Habs Leafs game opening night. Get back into it. You know what I mean? I'm really excited to continue to do this podcast, just break everything down. We'll probably have a lot more news and notes to talk about, not just covering the first 2 days of the season here. And we'll be back with you guys every week. And we're really excited to just do this podcast and be able to give you guys updates, information, anything else you guys like want us to talk about. Just let us know. We can incorporate it into the show.
Yeah, for sure. As you just said, we'll be back next week. So we'll be back on Sunday. We'll probably record Thursday. You've been listening to episode 2 of the Point to Point NHL Recap Show. I'm Pascal Pryor, joined by Mark Hallerlack. Of course, stay safe and have fun watching the NHL, everybody.